out in the country.
Okay, sounds good.
See, some people were against TVA, socialism.
It says here, like nitrate and sulfuric acid combines with glycerin, communism mixes with any class of labor, and such a mixture is nitroglycerin.
Highlander, poor old Highlander, they caught it on everything.
They teach from textbooks with such engaging titles as How to Think and The Fighting Eagle and Aims of Socialism and The Challenge of Russia. They teach and truly enough that socialism is an equalization of wealth in the country through ownership of public utilities by the government. Okay.
What paper was that in?
That's in the Knoxville
From
Journal.
Journal. That would be in the Journal.
It would be in the journal.
Yeah, it'd be more like the Journal. Used to be. I don't think there's much difference in them now. But the Journal used to be a very conservative paper. But I don't think there's much difference in the two papers we have now.
Well, what we were interested to know was, with this atmosphere, how were you able to do your work?
We just ignored it. That's all we could do. But it was rough, you know, having people talk to you about being a communist and all that. It was bad. It was bad. But I realized that the people who were protesting us and fighting us, they didn't really know what they were doing, and I didn't think they could do us a lot of damage, which they didn't. But we had some of our people simply did not have the courage to stand up to it. They just said they couldn't afford to be called communists, you know, which they couldn't.
And what did those people do?
They just didn't do anything. They just stayed with their little job and, you know, just became real placid citizens, not doing anything, not contributing anything. You know, you still have a lot of people like that don't do anything.
What do you remember any specific incidents of this red baiting towards you or the work you were doing?
Oh, it was, they would, I'm sure that come from management, but they would tell the people there, you know, you don't want to be like those Russians, you know, all those red Russians. They called them the Reds, you know, at that time. And these people in the unions, they're all Reds. That's what they were called. And those people didn't know what Reds were, but they knew it was something bad. You know, they didn't want to be called that.
Now, were you organizing in July? You were in July 1934. You had been organizing for almost a year.
Oh, yeah. In the plant. I was still working, though, see. I worked right up until the day of the strike. But I was organizing in the plant. And one thing that we had going for us there, some of the men, weavers there, at one time, you know, there was a pretty strong union in Gastonia, North Carolina. Do you ever read about that? Oh, the girl that was killed over there. You know,
Ella Mae Wiggins?
Ella Mae Wiggins. When Ella Mae, and we had some of those people who had worked in a unionized mill before, and they were a lot of help. They knew more about it.
Were they working with you? And
Yeah, and they were mostly weavers.
And they were
And
from North Carolina?
They were from, they had, whether their homes were there or here, they had worked in the Gastonia mills that were organized, and particularly that one where Ella Wiggins was. And I think, I have read several stories about that Ella Wiggins thing. I think there was communists in on that, wasn't there? I think there was.
Yeah, I believe so.
I think there was. I've forgotten all the details on that story, but
I'm gonna.
actually, our people didn't pay that much attention to it. For one thing, I don't think they read the newspapers that carefully. Oh, I forget it. Yeah, I don't think they read the newspapers that carefully, that they would pay that much attention to it. But of course, we had it. We employers, the mill owners and the mine owners and all those people, they would like for us, to have read it, particularly something like William Green's saying there. But they didn't pay that much attention to it. They weren't that much interested in. To them, communism is something foreign, and wasn't going to hit here, so
No,
why bother?
last night I asked you, we asked you how you got involved or what motivated you personally to take such an active role, and you said I just knew something was wrong.
That's right. That's right. I didn't know what, but I knew that it was not right for me or for anybody else to stand on their feet 10 hours a night for that low wages in that overheated cotton mill. You couldn't breathe. I don't know how we ever kept from getting, what is to call it in the textile mill? White lung, is it?
Brucellosis,
Yeah.
brown lung.
Because you couldn't breathe. All that stuff was in there, and I just thought there's something wrong about this. I didn't know what. I didn't know what. Anybody would come along with a solution. It just happened to be the labor movement that offered a solution. If you join this, we'll, had it been the Socialist Party or maybe even the Communist Party, whatever it was, you know, you're looking for a way out was what it was.
No, but other people weren't looking for a way out, were they?
No, not really. You know, um, a lot of people were so downtrodden and browbeaten in the Depression that a lot of them never did really come out of it. They never did. But I knew there's this. We talk about this being a great country. It's a big country. We could come out of it, and there must be a better way of life. And I was right. There is a better way.
How's your stomach? Can we talk a little bit about the early organizing when they first came here? I mean, I'm trying to get a picture. You're in the. Who came to you first
Oh,
to talk to you? How did it start?
oh, I guess that's in these scrapbooks somewhere there. It was a railroad boiler maker who organized textile workers. He was what the AFL, and it was not AFL-CIO then, it was just AFL, what they called a general organizer. And of course, the UTW, United Textile Workers, they were wanting to organize textile workers. So this Boilermaker came here to town and contacted some of the weavers to ask them, to talk to them about joining the union or setting up a union. And so these weavers asked me. And about, I think, 5 of us met with this Boilermaker. And of course, he was a railroad man, and he knew general trade unionism. He didn't know anything about the textile industry. But that didn't really make any difference because you're all working for the same thing, those 3 things: hours, wages, and working conditions. So he told us exactly how to go about it. And it was fairly simple. We get 7 people to sign a charter. They give us a charter, and then we started organizing from there. And that's what we did. And at first we did all the time, wasn't no at first to it. We slipped around and got memberships, like after work and.
Describe that to me.
Uh,
Where did you slip around?
um, After work, you'd tell somebody, hey, I want to see you after work. Because you couldn't very easily do it on the job. We did some of it on the job, but you couldn't very easily do it on the job because the foreman was always standing around somewhere. So we'd tell him, well, I want to see you after work, and walking home from work with them and getting them that way. That's how we got them all signed up.
Now,
And go ahead.
do you remember one of those conversations in particularly? Do you remember? Could you describe?
Well,
Give me a scene. Show me who you're walking with. What's
uh,
happening?
okay, well, okay, supposing I'm walking home with my friend, which might have been any of these women in there, say Roxy Clark.
Do you remember? Let's see. Can we be more specific? Do you remember how these girls got signed up? Should I mention these girls' names and we'll see if you remember a specific story?
I'm afraid I don't.
Okay.
I just don't remember those names.
Well, no, I meant one of those women that.
Roxy wasn't hard to sign up. She was one of the more intelligent people there. And see, every time we'd get one, that one would get one. That's, you know, what do they call it, the domino or mushroom or something. That's the way we would get them. And we'd start off the conversation by saying, hey, guess what? This organizer told us we can make more money here if we join the union. Okay, that gets their attention right off. And from that, we go on to tell them, then invite them to a meeting. And we started having our meetings on Saturday uptown. And we had big crowds. They'd all come out.
What about, these other girls?
Connors, at least two. I think there's Lucille and Fanny. Yeah, the Connors they were very active. They were organizers. They worked in the spinning room.
So how did,
No.
okay. And were you, because this article about communism, well, were those fears and those rumors flying in the early part, in early July of 1933?
Some, but not to a great degree. And I think that's because the people weren't reading. You know, a lot of them didn't have radios, so they didn't know about all that stuff. And we organizers were certainly not going to tell them.
So would you all split up and you would organize your room and they would the room that you worked in and they would organize the room they worked in?
And see, later then, what we intended to do if we get a contract signed would be to have a shop steward in each room or each department.
Now, how did they know to come to you, Lucille, initially?
Well, I think some of those weavers told the organizer. I had talked to them. You know, we had complained to each other about how bad conditions were, and they thought, well, I would be a good one because I was complaining all the time, and sure enough, I was a good one to go with them. So that's how we got it all started.
Can you tell me a little bit about you? So you'd walk people home?
Oh yeah, everybody walked then. I lived about a mile, I guess, from the mill, and everybody walked. So whoever you was walking with, you talked to them about it. And then we that were doing the organizing, we'd sort of get together and talk to, tell each other, well, I got so-and-so to join today. Who did you get to join? What did you tell her to get her to join? And all that kind of stuff.
Were you signing people up with cards too?
Uh-huh. We had to be careful about that,
Tell me about that.
Very careful. We finally stopped that because that was cumbersome. We would have them join at the meeting on Saturday and get a card there. That was better because you couldn't easily sign them up in the mail or after, even when you were walking home with them. So it was simpler. So what they did when they'd come to the meeting, that's when we'd sign them up and get the card. And that was a simpler way of doing it than trying to do it in the mail.
And can you tell me a little bit about these meetings? I mean, I'll tell you what.
Our meetings were pretty lively. Of course, all we talked about was, honestly, what they were doing there in those first meetings and in our initial organizing meetings, they should have been called grievance meetings because the people were bringing, and of course we were saying, well, if we join the union and form us a union here, we can do better. We can get rid of some of these grievances. But at every meeting they were bringing those grievances, that they had, and that was, of course, that was our opportunity to tell them, if we get our union here, we'll stop whatever the grievance is. You know, we had grievance like, for instance, these were little things. This come under the heading of working conditions. We had nowhere to hang our coats in the winter. And that was one of the things. We just had to lay them on top of a barrel of, what do we call them then, on a truck. We just have to lay our coat on top of a truck of spindles or wherever we could. And that was a complaint. And in the spinning department there where I worked, there was, at one time, I think there was 104 worked in there. And we had one little toilet. One. And, you know, that wasn't many for that many women. And we had one little water fountain. But we had to share the water fountain with the card room. It was right between the two. And those were the kind of grievances that they would bring up. And, of course, always the low pay. Always. You know, nobody was making enough money.
Was this the first time that these particular cotton mill people started to think about
Oh, yeah.
getting anything
Oh,
better
definitely.
for themselves?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, they had never thought about it before. Nobody had ever sown that seed there, you know, put that into their mind that there might be something better. So, no, they didn't. They never thought about it. They just thought, you know, well, that's the way my mother worked in the mill, that's the way my father worked in the mill, and that's the way the mill is run, and that's it. They had no role model anywhere to go by.
So what did it feel like to see? Can you describe watching people start to change their feelings about themselves and take a stand?
Yes, I can. At first, in the meetings, none of them would get up and say anything. They'd talk themselves to death after the meeting, you know, but they wouldn't say anything in the meetings. And finally, we got them, the very quietest ones, the ones that didn't have anything to say at any time. We got them so they would get right up in the meeting and express themselves. And some of them became reasonably good speakers from that.
How'd you do that?
And we'd talk about it, you know, we'd say, hey, look over here at Judy or Roxy or whatever her name is. Look at her. She used to be, she wouldn't say a word. And yeah, it did. I think it built her self-esteem there. It really did. I know it did mine.
What were you
Yeah.
like before you started this?
I was mean and but I knew something had to be done. I knew there was something wrong and something had to be done. But I didn't know where I would fit into it. You know, what can one person do? I used to think that. I don't think that anymore. One person can do a lot. But I just thought, well, what can one person do? But I saw this chance in the labor movement where, while you can't do it alone, certainly when you organize and you all get together, you can do it.
Was the labor movement the first place you saw a role for yourself as a woman
Yeah.
to come out like that?
Yes. Yeah, it sure was. No, see, I'd never, where did I go before that? Church and what little schooling I had, and that was about it. And so there wasn't.
Now, do you think it took a lot of courage for? I mean, were a lot of people frightened? A lot of them workers that you were.
Yes,
To?
yes, they were. They were really frightened because they didn't understand it, for one thing.
Didn't understand what.
They didn't understand the principles of the labor movement. They knew that they wanted better conditions, but it was hard for them to understand how the labor movement or anything else could get them better conditions. But as time went on, of course, what we needed, as
George.
George said last night, we needed an educational program. That was what was needed, but we didn't have it.
So, but how do people put? Are you feeling okay?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Can you, could you talk about people pushing through their, you watching people push through their fear?
Uh, I think they, I think through our union meetings, and when they found out that there was a way out, I think then they got mad. You know, they really got mad at the bosses and the management, the mill owners. They got mad at them,
Why?
and then they think, well, you bastard, we're working hard. You're making all the money. We're not making any money, and we're doing all this hard work here, and you're not paying us enough.
Did they
And
just realize that all of a
yeah,
sudden?
it seemed to me that it was all of a sudden that they just finally realized that because they'd never thought about it that way before. They hadn't been taught to think that way before.
What have they been thinking?
They just been thinking that the mill owner is the boss. He gives the orders. You do what you're told to do, and that's it. They just hadn't thought about it. I thought about there is a better way, but I didn't know what. I didn't know what the better way was. And the labor movement, this organizer, just happened to come along. Maybe it's been some preacher saying, if you join this, we'll we'll get it for you. We might have done that.
So here's these people pushing through their fear.
Right, right, and they did. And a lot of them that you just thought they never would say anything. They would
Now,
come.
can you talk about organizing women specifically?
Um, I didn't find that the women actually weren't as hard to organize as the men. And I think the reason for that, I found that out later. The reason for that was I think these men thought, well, I have to make a living, I have to, that's the man's job. And they were more afraid of losing their job than the women were. And once we got the women organized and got them into the union, they made better members than the men. And that's true today. The AFL-CIO wouldn't want to admit it, but it is. They are good union members.
Oh, could you talk about what did the women go through a certain kind of transformation too? Did you see?
Oh, I think they did. Yeah, I think they did.
Could you talk
Because,
about that?
well, they were like I was. They had never had a vehicle through which they could express themselves. And the labor movement gave them that. I know some of those people well, it's Act Two now. It was amalgamated at that time. Some of those women that joined, they just become real leaders, and they'd been nothing but meek little sewing machine operators before that. So they did use it.
It's did the mill owners or any of them start to come to you and say stop?
No, no. I think that the mill owners, I think our mill owners here, they were local people. I don't think they knew very much about the labor movement, and they were a bit afraid of us because they didn't know. They didn't know what we were going to do. And see, they had agreed to meet with us and negotiate a contract. And I think they were afraid of that. They knew how many members we had. They knew we had the whole plant organized.
How did you do that?
We just got them one by one until we got the whole plant in there. And the management knew that, of course.
Well, and that took about a year, right?
Close to that. It seems to me that we were organized in either October or November of '33, and then we were called out on the strike in September, wasn't it?
Of 34.
For the 34.
But you started organizing in July 33.
Yeah.
So you had organized for about a year.
Oh yeah. And
What occurred in that one year? I mean, can you compare in your mind the difference?
we'd have our meetings on. We just kept meeting, and then for the last 2 or 3 months we worked on the contract. That took up an awful lot of time because none of us knew how to write a contract. And we had to get an organizer from the railroads to show us how to write a contract. And he knew railroads, but he didn't know the textile industry. So we worked on our contract a lot there. And then we had one nice little social gathering. You know, we had a little dance one night,
Tell me
and
about your dance.
everybody come, and our own members furnished the music. You know, this part of the country is famous for its country music anyway, so we could do that.
Well, that must have been something.
It
Was that
was.
the first time that you all got together socially as a
I guess it
union?
was. Yeah, it was. Because we see we now these companies have picnics. We never had a picnic. Far from it.
Do you have any? Tell me a little bit about your family.
Well, uh, my mother and father both lived up in Jefferson County. She was considered an old maid when they were married because she was 26 years old, and my father was 35. Of course, I always thought about him as an old man because I was the fourth child, and he was getting old when I was born. And we lived there at above Strawberry Plains at the place called Rolling Hill. And we lived there in a little 5-room house.
What did your father do?
He ran a grocery store and was a farmer. And we lived there in that little 5-room house, you know, no inside plumbing, no electricity, but we lived like everybody else. That was a good thing about it.
And
We
your mother?
walked 2 miles to school. We had to do that. And my mother was a great reader. Formal education she did not have, but she was a reader, and she read to us. She was a reader all the time. And I always considered her, after I was grown and all, I considered her pretty well educated. She had read so much. And then was my oldest sister, the one's the picture on the wall over there, and my next oldest sister. Then my brother, then me, and 2 younger sisters. There were 6 of us. And 2 sisters is all that's left now.
The younger sisters.
My sister, who is just younger than I am, and myself are still living. Our youngest sister died on Valentine's Day of this year. She just died in February.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And and then my other sister, Ruth, she had lived in Florida for the last 34 years. But she came here, and she was here about a year. And she died from cancer of the bone. She didn't last long.
Now, what was your home life like?
Oh, we had a good home life. Now, I've thought about that a lot. Now, we would be considered extremely poor. You know, living in a little 5-room house with, as one of my sisters said not long ago, said, gee, we didn't have anything in that house at Rolling Hill but beds, which we didn't have, not much of anything, you know, but beds with all those kids and a little 5-room house. But I remember our early evenings and nights there as being very pleasant. We had those, we just had one old kerosene lamp. That was all we could see by. But Mother was either reading to us or she was helping the older ones with their lessons. And I was always there listening because I started school really when I was 4 years old. I just wanted to go, and the teacher didn't mind. And what my mother was doing, of course, was making a babysitter out of the teacher. But he didn't care. He didn't have many students anyway. So,
What did your mother read out loud to you?
oh, she read all kinds of books, historical novels, mystery stories, the newspaper. You know, just whatever she could get. I know later she told me she thought she hated Heidi because she'd read the books so many times. You know the story of Heidi. And
What do you remember your mother reading to you specifically? Does anything stand out?
I guess Heidi would be it because we did love that story. And Rebecca's Sunnybrook Farm was one we liked too. I liked that one. And Black Beauty. That was good books, and she read all of those to us, and she read them over and over and over because we didn't get, we didn't have anywhere to get books. Where would we get them?
Now, what did you tell me about? And your father was working as a farmer.
Uh-huh. As a farmer and a grocerman.
So what did you?
Oh, he dabbled in politics. He was a justice of peace up there for 35 years. So he was very active for what there was to be active in. And he didn't go to church, but my mother did.
Was he involved with any of the farmers' unions or
Oh
anything
no,
like that?
no, no, no. I don't know whether there was such a thing as a farmers' union at that time or not. I don't think there even was. See, that would have been way back in World War One days. I don't think they had a union.
What did you know about what do you recall about working people? I mean, seeing what kind of industry was there where you were living?
Oh,
Just
none.
farms?
Oh no, that was just farms, and the people there, particularly the black men, worked on the railroad. We always said they're working on the cross ties because that's all they did, was working on the tracks was what they were doing, and that was the only that, and then the Mascot zinc mines, which were only about 8 or 10 miles from where we lived. A lot of people worked in the zinc mines, and their wages, I found out later, they were even lower than the cotton mill wages. That zinc mines they just didn't pay anything at all.
Were you aware of that kind of stuff then?
No. I just thought, like everybody else did, well, they got a job and they get some money. Of course, I was pretty young then to know just how much they did get, but
What did you want to do when you got older as a child?
I didn't have it down to specifics. But I knew one of my great ambitions was to work in New York City because one of the school teachers had sent me a postcard that had, I'm sure it was the Empire State Building. It had the tallest building I'd ever seen. And I thought, I want to work in New York City and work in that big building. And sure enough, when I worked in New York City, I could see the Empire State Building out of out of the window there. And I wanted to go abroad, as we called it then. And later, I got to figuring out. Well, even after I got in the labor movement.
What you wanted to do when you grew up?
Yeah. Well, I hadn't. A few times I got to come to Knoxville with my father. He had to come to town twice every year, to buy supplies for the store. And we kids had to take our turn in coming with him to the store. And I used to see women in these stores that we'd go in sitting there using a typewriter. And I thought I bet that's him. My bride lives down in there somewhere.
So you wanted to learn how to type?
Yeah, I thought that looked so businesslike, to see those women sitting there at a typewriter. Well, I did too. When I was working at Cherokee, I got on the day shift so I could go to night school, and I did learn to type.
Well, was Cherokee your first job?
No, Appalachia was my first job, Appalachian Mill. Then I went to Cherokee.
What
And
did you do at the Appalachian Mill?
same thing, winding machine. I was an experienced winder, so I could go from mill to mill. And I went to night school then to learn to type. And glad I did because, do you type?
I do.
Do you?
But I can't do touch typing.
Oh, can't you? Well, it's certainly something well worth knowing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I think it is.
Absolutely. Okay.
What was I? About 16. Look at the clothes we had on.
You're about 16. So where are you living when you're 16?
Here in Knoxville.
You were here in
We left
Knoxville.
left the country when I was 14.
Why did you leave the country?
Well, my parents made a big mistake. They didn't realize at the time, and nobody ever held it against them. But they were country people, and my daddy they thought that the kids would have better opportunity for education in Knoxville, in the city, which maybe we might have had. But it sure was a bad move on his part. Because when he moved to Knoxville and set up a store here, he tried to run it just like he did in the country. You couldn't do that. Crediting everybody, you know, getting exactly what people wanted in the store, not charging them enough for it. And he couldn't make it. He just went out of business. He didn't know how to run a store. And selling his farm and his store in the country and moving to Knoxville was a mistake. It was definitely a mistake.
So, did you continue high school here in Knoxville?
I didn't graduate from high school. No, when we first left the country, we moved to Dayton, Tennessee, where the Scopes trial was, you know. And I went to that Ray County High School 1 year. And that's all. I was a high school dropout.
So, are you working in the mill at this time?
No, when we were at Dayton, I wasn't quite 16, and I wasn't supposed to go to work. But when we moved to Knoxville, I went to work before I was 16.
So, in this picture, are you already working?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
And so, you were working at Cherokee then when you were 16, or you were working at Appalachian?
At Cherokee, I guess, because I didn't stay at Appalachian, but just a little while. They fired me.
Why did they fire you?
I decided one day when the fair was here not to go back to work after lunch. They fired me.
Was that difficult?
Oh, not much. I just went to a Cherokee. As I said, you know, they didn't check any references. They didn't care.
Now, is this the sister who was an organizer?
No, no, this one was never an organizer. She was a secretary.
Is that your mama?
No, that was an aunt. I don't know who some of these people are.
Are these you?
Let's see. No, that's just, I don't know who those people are. And this is some of my cousins. I don't know, am I in that one?
Lonesome in a crowd, it says. Can you see? Are you in this
Let's see,
one?
am I in that one? Oh, sure I am. That's me standing back there.
Uh-huh.
Look at my hair.
Are those your sisters?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, which one? Can you name? Which ones are they? Is this when you're living in the country?
That's Marjorie. That's Lena, the one who died in this year. And that's my oldest sister, Mary, the organizer.
Uh-huh. Now, why do you think you and Mary, how did you and Mary become organizers?
Well, I think she saw the light just like I did. She was working at Leibowitz Shirt Factory. And that was just as hard as working in a mill. And Leibowitz was...
Were you the first one to join the union, or Mary was?
Oh, yeah, I was. And then she worked at Leibowitz, and the Amalgamated had organized them. I think it was organized maybe when she went there. No, it wasn't either, because they had a lot of trouble. And I don't know whether Eula told you about it or not, but when they were trying to organize from the inside, like we did at Cherokee, they were really rough. One of the girls who wouldn't join the union one time, they took her clothes off, made her walk down the street nude. They were mean.
The union organizers
Yeah,
were?
uh-huh. And another time, and that's a wonder they hadn't killed her. Eula could have told you about this. They put rat poison on a girl's sandwich.
Who did?
The girls that were trying to organize the union. They were mean. Those amalgamated girls were mean. They still are. That wasn't a nice thing to do.
No.
But they did.
No.
Then they got their union organized. They just got mad at those girls because they wouldn't join.
Now, what was is your sister was 4 years older than you? 2 years?
Let's see. Mary was...
So Mary was 2 years older than you were.
4 years.
4 years older than you were. And what Did she? She never worked in a cotton mill.
Uh, yeah, she worked at the Appalachian. She worked there for a while too. And I've forgotten why she quit, but she quit there and went to the Leibowitz shirt factory. I guess to make more money. I think they made a little more money in the.
I'm just. It's interesting to me that both of you got so involved. Did she? Did you come home and talk to her and tell her what
Oh
was
yeah,
going on?
yeah. Oh yeah, we talked about it a lot. And until the split of the, until the CIO split off, see, we went to the same meetings. See, ACWA was, it was a AFL union. They all were. There wasn't any CIO until 1936.
So in '34, you were going to the same
Oh yeah.
meetings
Mm-hmm.
until you organized your own local.
Well, by the time I had organized this local at Cherokee, she had become involved at Leibowitz. Yeah, we went to Central Labor Council. She was a delegate over there, and I was too. We went over there. And then when the split came, of course, she was CIO and I was still AFL. Made no difference.
That didn't cause any problems
Nah,
for the two of you.
no, not a bit.
Let's see. So that's a wonderful picture of the two of you. Is this you
No, that's my oldest sister.
and these boys?
That in the center is my brother. Aren't those terrible pictures?
I don't think so. Okay. This is the man without a heart.
I don't know who stuck them little silly things in there.
What was it like on the picket lines? As a woman and as someone.
Oh, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad on the picket lines. In fact, it was kind of fun. At first, I was about the only one of the women, that would pick up a sign and start doing it. But I was joined by others then, and we made a good time out of it. A strike is a is a good time for the first few days, or maybe a week. Then it's not any fun. By the time it's a week old, the men's wives are wanting them to go back to work. Everybody's missed a payday. The rent's due. And we didn't get any strike benefits. Most unions now give strike benefits. We didn't get any strike benefits at all. But it was kind of fun on the picket line. And sympathizers would come around and bring us candy bars and sometimes lunch or a hamburger or something. And we had a lot of fun doing it. But then they got an injunction against us, and we couldn't picket any longer.
Did you all do that?
And that was that injunction was very disruptive because see, it broke up our picket line, and we had nowhere to. We weren't in contact with each other. We didn't have a telephone. I don't know many of the people who couldn't afford a telephone, and the injunction. We could get together there on the picket line, and the ones that weren't picketing, we took it in shifts, of course. But the ones that weren't picketing would come down there to talk to us, and we'd see them. But after the injunction, and we couldn't meet on the picket line, well, we had to start trying to meet over at the Labor Temple, and that seemed to be cumbersome for people because an awful lot of the people that worked at Cherokee lived around there, very near there. And it was disruptive, very disruptive. Well, of course, that was the purpose of it. And it worked.
Did it work?
Well, it worked so far as disrupting that union. It sure did. It sure did. Because, see, we didn't have any way. That was our meeting place.
So how were you able to continue that?
We continued it by having our meetings, still having our meetings. And the very few, 5 or 6 maybe, that had a car, they would go around and visit the others and also bring them to meetings.
Visit the other strikers?
Visit the other strikers.
No,
And
these were other Cherokee strikers?
yeah, oh yeah,
To keep the
yeah,
contact?
to keep that contact up. And we lost some at that, because and if you didn't see them well, of course, the communication was breaking down, and that was bad. So the injunction was, it served the purpose of the people who wanted it served on us. All right.
Were you one of those that went around in the car to try and talk to people?
Yes, yeah, and we did, and they were the injunction was confusing. You know, well, why are they doing this to us? And we had to explain that to them. That they,
What did you explain?
we explained to them that that was the company getting the injunction against us to keep us from. They'd say, "Well, the streets are free. We can walk out here if we want to." Well, we couldn't. You couldn't. You can't picket a place, and you know.
You're not there.
No, there was no, so there, you couldn't do that. So that was the beginning of the end. The subpoenas were in the injunction.
Can you talk about whole, that whole process, the subpoena process?
Well, what happens?
Well, what happened to you specifically?
All right, the company gets it. Ours was in Chancery Court. Yeah, I know it was. The company got subpoenas for some of the leaders. I don't know how many at this time, but I was one of them. And then a deputy sheriff comes out and serves the subpoena on you, and then you're cited to trial.
Did that happen to you?
To the trial. We never did. We never did get to trial. The strike was called off, and, and all that stuff was happening. We never did get to trial. And I was glad we didn't. The company would have beat us, with the politics being what it was at that time. They would have defeated us. We were defeated anyway with the injunction and the way things were going.
So what did you do?
I was like a lot of them. I was certainly out of money, and I had made, or a local union had made, good friends out of this public relations director at TVA, and he got me a job at TVA as a file clerk. And I worked there then from, seemed to me like I went to work in November of 34. And I worked there until 39, 38 or 39. They transferred me to Wilson Dam. And then from Wilson Dam, I was transferred to the War Department, Washington. There was no common ground there. We didn't, I would see them for a while. I'd see them uptown on Saturday.
I missed the beginning of that. So we're talking about when the strike was over, people were blacklisted, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I didn't see them much. You would see some of them uptown maybe on a Saturday or something like that. But they became scattered, see, and they started going out of town and doing like I did, find a job. Some of them took jobs as waitresses or wherever they could, and I got a job at TVA. Because at that time you had to go to work. You had to have money, such as it was. But I thought TVA paid real good. I made $105 a month there to start. Imagine that, $105. Of course, we didn't have Social Security then, and nothing came out. And I got $62.50 every 2 weeks.
How did it feel? I mean, did you feel like you were looking around? Where did my union go?
Yeah, you sort of did. But you must remember that there was a very liberal element in the TVA. And I joined, as soon as I went to work there, I joined the union. It was, I know it's changed now, but it seems to me like it was UFW, United Federal Workers, or something as that. But now it's the OPEIU, Office Professional, OPE, Office Professional Employees. international union, and uh, I joined that. I'm sure it was UFW, United Federal Workers, at that time, and there was a pretty radical bunch in TVA at that time. They're not there now. However, they still have that union. But I don't know. I never cared much for federal or state union, either one. You don't have anybody to negotiate with. Who are you going to negotiate with for your salary at TVA? Okay, you can negotiate, uh, take it all the way up to the board there. And the salaries are set by the government, really. So they're not, the unions are just not, I'm glad we have them for what they are worth, but they're not worth a lot. After I started working TVA, while my union, the textile workers, was gone, I belonged to that United Federal Workers, and I was a delegate to Central Labor Union. So I was still in the labor movement, and still had hopes that great things could be done.
Now, what happened to what happened to a lot of the others? I mean, did it seem, well, first of all, did Cherokee ever get organized?
No, never. It's not yet. Probably never will be.
It's hard to. It seems like it's strange to hear you say that.
Uh,
After seeing all the work that you've
I
done
know
all
it.
these
I know
years.
it. But if they have gone that long, and I don't know, in some of these plants, I don't know about Cherokee because it's moved to Sevier County. But we tried to organize what was the standard knitting mill here. I'm sure you've heard of Health Knit Underwear, Fruit of the Loom. Okay, that came from the standard knitting mill down here. And we tried.
When was this?
We tried say in 1936. We tried to organize that place, and then in let's see, this would have been, I believe it was about 1955. Uh, the ILGW put on a real organizing drive here, and held an election and lost it. They didn't lose it bad, but they still lost it. But in the meantime, what was happening there, the standard was raising their pay and giving them all the things that a union would give them. That happens a lot of times. And that's what happened at the standard here, till it became one of the best places in Knoxville to work. And of course, what the management was telling them, look what you've got here, and you're not paying union dues. And that happens a lot of times. There was all of our hard work put into it. If we hadn't tried to organize them and scared the company that way, they would not have given them those good conditions. See, every time we'd put on an organizing drive, they'd give them a raise, give them another water fountain, until they got pretty good working conditions without paying any dues.
And did that happen at Cherokee in the year prior to the strike? Did they start to try and give you better?
No, we outwitted them there. They thought we didn't have intelligence enough, to even join a union. No, they didn't. They didn't try to
Why
pacify.
did they think you didn't have much?
Well, anybody stand there and work like we did for the low wages, I think they just thought, well, we didn't have much intelligence, and a lot of cotton mill workers didn't have. There was a lot of them, that were illiterate, couldn't even. And to me, that's the most pathetic thing in the world, that illiteracy. But
Do you see that as part of the whole mill experience?
yes, because Tennessee is way. We're way up at the top. We're not number one in illiteracy, but we're right close to the top. I think we're number 4 or something. Of course, that's a drawback anywhere, even in the mills. But
I'm sure that there's a connection. Is the amount of courage that it took for you to challenge still.
Somebody had to do it. What is it? It's a dirty job, but somebody had to do it. I think as I told you all last night, I don't know that it was courage. I think I was mad. I saw what was going on and it wasn't right. Let's do something about it.
How did the men that came to organize, did you feel their respect? I mean, what did they think of how did you deal with women getting involved in places of leadership? Did you have a role like that?
Uh, when our union was organized as a preacher camel, he was the president, and I think I think they let me be the recording secretary. I think I was the only woman that held an office there. But then we had another woman there. Her last name was Ogle, Lula Ogle, I believe. Lula Ogle she was pretty bright and she wanted to do something. So I got her to take my job as secretary. And I wanted to be vice president. So I got her to take the job as secretary. Um, but the men,
Did you get the job as vice president?
oh yeah, they were, I think they were interested enough in their own welfare that if they could get these women to do the work, they would. They'd lay their prejudices aside, in order to get us to do the work, which we did.
Now, was it a full-time commitment? Were you working all the time?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, except that short time we was on the picket line. Yeah, I was working. I worked it. Yeah.
But I mean, full-time commitment in terms of the organizing too. The union organizing.
Oh, not until later was I paid for that. See, organizing that Cherokee, that was not a paid job.
No, but I just mean in terms of how
Uh,
many hours,
oh, you put
woman
in.
hours you were putting in
Oh
all the
Lord,
time.
you work all day. Work after the Wagner Act and the NRA. We got 8 hours a day. Well, I'd work my 8 hours, and then I'd do organizing for the rest of the time. And that was, I told you last night that some of the mill and mine owners were afraid people were going to get in trouble with all that time on their hands. Well, I spent mine organizing, so that was worse than getting into something that they'd be thinking about.
Well, you do get.
Who'd you talk to over at Act Two? Did you? That was the Moose Hall, and that building has been torn down. And of course, the old Cherokee Plaza is still down there, and the Labor Temple is still here. But
Cherokee Plaza is the mill,
it is the mill.
and it's a store.
It's been turned into a mall. And it's real nice, they made it real nice. Stores and all that.
Huh. Do you ever go shopping there or anything?
Oh, I've been down there. It's more high-rated offices like insurance offices and things like that than shops, but they turned it into a real pretty place. It wasn't pretty when we worked there. It's just an old brick building.
I guess if someone looked at that building, they'd have no idea what went
No.
on in there.
Oh, no, No, that's been too many years ago.
But even just looking at it, place is pretty.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty now. But
That seems to be happening all over. I mean,
I had a company store. The miners, they always had those company stores. In the song 16 times I owe my soul to the company store. But we never had that.
and you didn't have a company store at Cherokee.
No, no. Mm-mm.
So you were all much more independent than a lot of these people that would live in a mill village.
Oh yeah. They stayed in debt all the time, just like that song says, to the company store. They couldn't quit their job if they wanted to.
So did that have an effect on people's willingness to join up? in the union?
Yeah, I think it did. Uh-huh. I think that it did.
Because we've been in other places where, I mean, even if they'd been there 2 years, I'm not sure they would have been able to organize the way that you all did within
Uh-huh.
a year.
Uh-huh. Is that mill in Gadsden now? Is it
It's
organized?
no, it's a shopping mall.
Oh, is it? It's like Cherokee. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And well, how many people did you find there?
Did everything just end at when the strike came back? When the strike was over, people just started going. The people who weren't
The
fired.
people, the people that were blacklisted, started going out of town and finding jobs elsewhere, just like I did. Because you couldn't sit around, you'd starve to death. You had to do the best you could to find a job. So, but so far as the union was concerned, it just disintegrated. There's no union. There's no, you know, nobody's working. What are you gonna meet for? There's nothing left.
And then everybody else just went back to work.
That's right. And a lot of those people um, that went back to work, they weren't really scabs. You know, they didn't know. I'll never forgive the labor movement for having that strike. It was so untimely. If we had just been left alone, we could have uh, got our contract signed, even if it was a sorry one, and saved our union and still been working. Then we come back and get a better contract. But the way it was, we just lost everything. All that effort was down the drain. Although people used to tell me and still do that no organizing effort's ever completely wasted. I think it is sometimes.
But you didn't change.
No, I didn't change.
What do you think? Now, were there other people that came out of your
Oh,
organization that didn't change?
many of them I don't know. But I didn't change because I knew the conditions that made me mad in the first place at the mill was still there. And something still ought to be done about it, whether I'm there or not. So that's why I kept right on working at it and believing in it and all that. Because it was still, the situation was still there. I wasn't there, but the situation is still there.
Now, did you start to be able to, by the end of that strike, had you developed a politics that you hadn't had before?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
Tell me about that.
Well,
And if you could compare it to the way you went in.
uh, now are you talking about partisan politics?
Or even just ideas. I mean, if before you were angry about just about
Okay, well,
wages, had it turned into something
yeah, well,
different?
something that I did learn, and I certainly learned this from the labor movement, because I keep repeating, you know, how uneducated I was along with all the others. And I certainly learned early in the labor movement that if we wanted to change things, change their whole social stance, it had to come through political power. It's the only way it could come. It had to come through laws. Well, laws are made by men that me and you elect.
Or women.
Yeah, yeah, right. That we elect, and I began to see that then, and I talked it to our people, you know. But there was a very discouraging factor there. I didn't vote. Let's see. The first year that I was old enough to vote was 21. I think, don't they vote at 18 now, I think, don't they? It's 21. I didn't vote that year for a very good reason. I had to pay a poll tax of $2. So that was one of the things that the labor movement in Tennessee did do. They kept needling on that until they did get rid of that poll tax. But, you know, that was a, they, even in one of the songs, that one, where the saints go marching in, we had it, oh, when the poll tax is no more, well, you know.
Oh, when
And
the poll tax
is no,
no.
right.
What's the next line? Da,
Da, da, da, da, da.
Did
I don't know.
you don't know it?
I don't either. I've forgotten them. I used to know all those songs all the way through.
What did you what do you think you learned from that whole year in of organizing in 1933?
I think I think I learned um, with learning things from Miles Horton and Franz Daniel. Um, I learned that there was a way out. I wasn't too certain of it before. I thought there should be, and I wanted it to be, but I wasn't certain that there was. But I think I learned from them and through them, that there was a way out, and that organizing. And then it was at that time that I really got interested in politics because I could see that, you know, we have laws that are governing us and guiding us all the time. So be careful who we send to make those laws.
Did you hear your mother and father talk like this when you were growing up?
No, no. They talked about how the garden's growing and how high the price of sugar is and, things like that. I don't remember them ever talking. However, my father was always interested in politics.
Did you have faith when you were writing these letters? That you were
Yeah.
that you could change something?
Yes, because like all the other people around here, I had a lot of faith in Roosevelt. I thought when we got President Roosevelt, now we've got it made, and everybody else thought that too. That's why we wrote all those letters to people that weren't. I don't know why we wrote them to everybody, but we'd see a name in the paper. Well, let's send him a letter too, which didn't hurt anything.
What did it do for some of these other women? I mean, was this the first time they had participated in anything like this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember one man particularly. I don't know whether his letter's in there or not, and I've even forgotten who he wrote the letter to. Um, but I remember typing the letter for him. It was probably the president. I don't know who it was to. But anyway, when he got an answer back from that, he carried it around in his shirt pocket until it was worn out. Hey, look, I got a letter from the president. Look at this. I got this. And then he said, well, since he answers my letters, I'll be writing to him all the time. It made him feel good, that he's got a letter from the president, that he could write to the president and get an answer back. And so Roosevelt he really did a lot for this country, didn't he? Or you weren't back there, but boy, when he came into office, he started right in. He didn't fool around a long time like these presidents do now.
How did you feel about his participation during the strike?
Well, we thought he was with us. We don't know. We didn't know. We didn't want to know. We said that he'd given us the right to, through that Wagner Act, shall be able to organize and peaceful something without intimidation or coercion. And we took that we were free to do what we wanted to do. And we liked him. So he could do no wrong. We don't know that he didn't. But of course he was popular. But there was people that called him a socialist. Oh, a lot of them did, He was a socialist. And one year in the agricultural department they killed some pigs. You ever read about that? Well, I've forgotten why, but I guess it was to raise the price of pork. Oh, that's a terrible thing they were doing. They shouldn't be doing that. We thought Roosevelt knows what he's doing.
And you thought he was taking care of you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think the people all over the United States thought that up until he died. He got such an overwhelming vote. Nobody could beat him.
Did you, as a union organizer, did everyone know the risks that they were taking when they were organizing? In a climate that considered you all to be...
No, I don't think they did. Mm-mm. I don't think they realized.
Did you?
Yeah, I did, but I didn't care. I knew there were risks. But some of them, I think some of those amalgamated girls that went into it, I don't think they knew the risks. They sure found out the hard way. Did you get a lot of stories from Eula?
Oh yeah.
I bet you did.
Um.
There was a woman here. She was crazy, Roxy Paris. Um, she testified. I think it was before the Dyes Committee at that time. That I had told her, and what she said a lot of things about me, that I was a communist, and this, that, and the other. But what discredited her story was she said that I got her a list of the communists in this part of the country out of TVA files. If there had been communists, TVA wouldn't have had them in their files.
Oh, so this is after the strike.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, several years after the strike.
And what about during the strike? Was there? Did they ever? Did they collect literature that you might have been passing out that they considered to be communist inspired?
Uh,
Was there an incident?
I think they did. But see, you must remember that even the newspapers and the mill owners, they were pretty ignorant themselves of what was going on. I got to get a drink. That we had a place for everybody, from the very sensitive opera singers down to the hedgehogs, not hedgehogs, what do we call underground construction?
Moles.
No, well, whatever we called them,
Liners,
yeah.
okay.
That we had, that there was a place for them. And you know, of course, opera singers do belong.
Oh sure. I guess they
Uh-huh.
belong to
Music-
SAG, right?
Yeah, musicians is, you know, that's a strong union. Always has been.
Um, it seems to me that you all kept on fighting back. That most of these letters were written in January and February of 1935. So even though you had gone to
Yeah,
work somewhere
we did.
else,
Uh-huh.
you could see they're
Yeah.
all around there.
Yeah, we did. We definitely kept on doing
So
that.
it's not like you all just dissipated. So
No, we didn't. We secretary to the president. Oh, that was to make Donald Richburg. And these were all in the archives in Washington.
that's right.
I wouldn't have thought they'd have kept, you know, such things as that.
Well, it was in a file called the Cherokee Spinning Mill.
There's one where Fanny Connor wrote to Judge Walter Stacy, National Textile Relations Board. Like I told you last night,
But see,
it was such a weight for everything.
well, what is really interesting about this is that obviously you kept your some part of your organization
Oh, we did.
stayed together.
Oh, we did.
Could you talk about that?
We kept this remnant. In fact, we would meet downtown on Saturdays, what was left of us, until it just completely, well, I guess I was transferred to Wilson Dam and the others went other places, you know. But we kept it like that. But those people who had gone back to work, they did not come to those meetings. They didn't dare. I don't blame them. They couldn't. It was just these few stragglers where we'd found jobs somewhere else, you know. And we would meet and talk and write letters.
So it
And
was just the blacklisted workers.
oh, yeah, yeah. The ones that had gone back, they wouldn't have dared come out.
So what did you talk about in these meetings?
Talked about how much we disliked Cherokee and what could we do, you know, and what we could eventually do and all that. And a lot of those, well, there wasn't a whole lot of them either, But through this director of labor relations at TVA, Claire Killen, he gave a lot of our men construction jobs at Norris.
A lot of the
Yeah,
blacklisted men.
and that was good because they couldn't find jobs here in Knoxville, and some of them had families. Of course, most of them had families, and they needed to stay here.
Now, you're all applying, you're all trying to get your jobs back.
Uh-huh.
Did you want to go back to work there?
Not really, but I wanted them to, to make it. I let them make the decision whether I went back or not, and they said, no. See what we all did? We all walked up to the gate, and of course, they wouldn't let me in. Wouldn't let a whole bunch of us in. Oh, the only ones they let in was the ones who had sworn their loyalty and all that kind of stuff.
How did they swear their loyalty?
Well, they just told the boss, I'll be good if you take me back. Just something like that. And I still blame a lot of that. We could have won that strike 2 or 3 years later. If the people had known anything about the labor movement, they didn't. We could have won that. And I think it would be the same all over the country. I think they could have, it was just untimely. But I guess the powers that be in Washington, our president of our textile workers and Francis Gorman and all them, I suppose they thought they were doing the right thing. But it certainly was untimely. Because as I told you, I learned later from Franz Daniel and Miles Horton that, and I've used this a lot of times too, in helping with negotiations with other unions. You always ask the company for more than you want, more than you expect to get. And then you compromise and you go along. And when it comes down to the very last ditch, compromise instead of losing your union. Because you got your union, you can come back another day. If you don't have, you can't. And that's what happened to us. That there was nothing to go back. The leaders were all gone, and there's nothing to go back to there.
So you lined up to go back to work with everybody else?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we all got in line.
Could you describe that?
Yeah. Oh, this was a long line. There, if you ever see that spinning company there, that gate is still there. Cherokee Plaza, they call it now, is on the corner of Sutherland Avenue and Concord Street. We went in on the Concord Street, great big gate there that they opened when it was time to go to work, And the foreman and the superintendent and 2 or 3 of the bosses was standing there. And as we walked up to the gate to go in to work, they'd close the gate to me, not you. You get out. Next one, maybe they'd be somebody that they knew. Well, she's all right. Let's take her. But they slammed that gate right in your face.
What did you do?
Well, I just walked away. That's all you could do. I was mad, of course, but so were the others. And then we started, a whole bunch of us, and we started laughing about it. It certainly wasn't funny. But what else could we do? We just laughed about it. We said, we're blacklisted. We can't work anywhere now.
Did you try and look for other work real soon after?
I did. And, of course, I got the job at TVA. And so did the others.
So you
And I'm sure in fact, I know they did. A lot of them got jobs here in Knoxville at other mills because they didn't check your reference. No. Now, they would have mine because my name had been in the paper and everything. They would have known me. But just some of those names, they wouldn't have known the people. And if you could run a machine, whatever kind of machine needs to be run, well, they'd take you without any kind of reference. But a lot of them went out of town. And that they did that. I am certain that they did. And I imagine my name heads the list somewhere. The ones that shouldn't be hired. But these who had never had their name in the paper, and hadn't appeared on the picket line or anything, well, they wouldn't know about them. But no, I couldn't have got a job anywhere. Nowhere. If it hadn't at that time, had it not been for TVA, I don't know where I would have found a job. I don't think a store would have hired me as a clerk because I was a known agitator. And I don't think a restaurant would have hired me as a waitress. So if I hadn't got a job at TVA as a file clerk, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know where I could have gone because they wouldn't hire me. Not only was I blacklisted in the mail, but you're blacklisted in the community.
And you blacklisted in a way that other people weren't.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Uh, I'm still blacklisted. I couldn't go to work in a mill anywhere today. Not that I want to, but I couldn't. Oh, they had their books all right. And some of the men went into other work. They got in as apprentices in this. Claire Killen helped us do that. They got in as apprentices in the construction trades, which was good.
That must have been very sad, Lucille.
It was sad, very sad situation.
What was the saddest part of that?
Well, um, I think the injunction and breaking up the union, because that did break up the union. I think that was the saddest part. As long as we could all get together, and we could at least talk to each other and all. But the complete breakup of the union, there's just no more union. No, we don't meet anymore, and that's all. And it was bad.
And what positive for you came out of this whole situation?
Um,
Something.
I don't know. Maybe being blacklisted, maybe that was good. I might not have got a job at TVA if I hadn't been blacklisted. That was good, but I think more was that I got this smattering of knowledge of the labor movement, and goodness knows that's what it was. Until Miles Horton gave me books to read, and I associated with him and organizers like Franz Daniel. I think that was what was important to me. And I knew then that I wanted to work in the labor movement because I didn't know any other organization at that time that was doing as much for the people as the labor movement was. Not too certain that I know any now.
Did a lot of, we've heard people say, back then, like, Southerners, lint heads.
Oh,
They can't join. What do they know about a union?
Right.
They wouldn't have the guts to join.
That's right. We were lint heads. And I never heard the word textile workers. We never used that. That word was never used. We were cotton mill hands and lint heads. And like when the guy said after we got blacklisted, he said, well, at least we got us a new title out of this. We're blacklisted textile workers. We're not, we're not lint heads and cotton mill hands now. We're textile workers. But that's right. That's what they were called, lint heads. And because that lint would settle in your hair, And when you'd come out of the mill in the afternoons or come out when it was still daytime. Nobody came out early. But everybody looked like they had gray hair, all their hair was white.
A lot of people, even today, don't think that Southern cotton mill workers can be organized.
Oh, I know it. I know it. I think they can. I think that there's still just what is needed now is what was needed then. They do need to do some educational work before they even tried. But no, it would be hard to organize them. I think, does Act Two, I haven't talked to them lately, do they keep organizing drives going all the time? Foots and me up there in that. Um,
I'd love for you to look at some of the pictures and think about the way that they sort of described you and what you thought about the media at the time, or how you approach the media at the time?
I remember this one very well. This one where it shows me with Foots Weaver and pretty Miss Lucille Thornburgh. Miss, they put on them then, you know, two of the leaders of the Cherokee strike. And Cecil Weaver's brother, Foots Weaver. The two Weaver guys were, the press, believe it or not, was fairly kind to us. See, there's nothing really bad about the story that they would write about us. So generally, because they were, Haywood Broun had just really started organizing the newspaper reporters, you know, at that time. And there was a guy here by the name of Johnny Mutu. And, run to the bathroom every minute.
Johnny Mutu, that's what you're saying.
Johnny Mutu was a reporter. And they were pretty kind to us. Like in that picture, there's nothing, see the headline is there, Cherokee, no violence reported by officers. We weren't a violent outfit. We were just picketing up and down there. But that was a big day there. I think this was, if I don't remember any of the exact dates on these things, but I think that this was, we had so many people there that this was just a day or so before the injunction. See, we had a big crowd there. And right there, right down that way, is where the big gate is, where we went in.
What was that like having all those people there? Did it feel like you were doing something great?
Yeah, it sure did. And the more we had, the greater we felt. And we had all those people milling around there. That was good. Did you notice the overalls that the men had on there?
Now, what would your job be while you were there at the picket line? What did you do as a leader?
Mostly, I helped make the signs. See, we weren't carrying signs that day for some reason. I don't know why we weren't. I helped make the sign, and I recruited the people to picket. See, we didn't want all 600 picket in one day. We wanted shifts. We wanted them for the morning shift and for the afternoon shift, and because that walking up and down, that can get mighty tiring. So that's what I did more than anything else, was organize the picket line. And that's why the newspapers got to knowing me, because I was the one that was organizing them, you know, and telling them, you walk here and you carry this sign and all that.
How'd you learn how to do that?
I don't know. I just thought that was the way to do it. I hadn't learned that, because I had no organizational abilities at that time at all. But I knew if we're going to get anywhere, we've got to get together, and we've got to attract some attention. And that we did.
How did you do that?
We did that with those picket signs. I don't know why we didn't have our signs that day.
What did your signs say?
Higher wages now. And we had nasty little signs, you know. Mr. Mebbin's got his, but we haven't got ours. And we're walking and he's driving a Cadillac and all that kind of stuff, you know, just real nasty, tacky, but nasty. And then we had that, what do we want? We want more money, we want more.
Were you chanting?
Oh yeah, we chanted and we'd sing. And you have a lot of fun on a picket line, like I said, for a while, but that doesn't last. When there's no paycheck. The babies are hungry. The wives are wanting their husbands to go back to work. I think most unions now, I know the steel workers do, and I know the auto workers do. I don't know about the others. They pay strike benefits, and they should. And I think that's why their strikes are more successful.
Did you actually keep people from going in the mills? Did anyone try to get in during that
No,
time?
no, we had her closed down tight.
Did people come to watch?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of watchers, and we had people that would come there and cheer us on, you know, we had good, bring us cold drinks.
Did you have speakers that would come and stand and speak to the
Oh
workers?
yeah, we had that Franz Daniel, we had Miles Horton, you know, we had a lot of those. And um, Miles was labeled at that time in Highlander strictly as a communist outfit, you know. And Miles didn't much like to make those public speaks, but evidently we didn't care because we got him to do it. And a lot of, and the police were pretty decent to us too. But I heard in other places, while our strike here was peaceful enough, I heard in other places like in North Carolina and particularly and in Virginia that there was a lot of violence, a lot of clashing between the police and.
So how did these mill owners come to do this injunction? I mean,
Uh, they were thinking, and rightly so, that if they got an injunction against us, that would break up the union. It stopped our picketing. We had no gathering place. We had no incentive or reason for gathering other than telling people to come downtown to a meeting hall. And I think they knew that would break it up. And as soon as that happened, of course, then they said they'd take the little nervous Nellies back, which they did. So they did. I think the injunction broke the strike.
and it happened so quickly.
Oh, sure it did. Nobody expected it.
Did they have to go through the police? Did they have to go through a judge?
They had to go through a judge. They went through Chancery Court here and issued that.
And how was there surveillance of some sort? How did they know exactly who the leaders were who should get those specific injunctions?
Pictures like that.
So you were targeted.
Yeah. And I was, I talked to the reporters, and I knew a lot of the policemen, and it wasn't hard for them to find out. They might have had spies in our meetings, and they might not.
Let me get you some again.
But I think it's going to go away. I'll be running to the bathroom all night if I keep drinking.
Wait, so Gorman was plugging for you?
Yes, he was. And we, as I told you last night, we like Gorman. You know,
Because this is dated December 6, 1934. And he was writing on behalf of your union.
that's right. I think if this old man, that Thomas McMahon, you know, he was the president. Francis Gorman was just the first vice president. It should have been the other way around because Gorman was sharp. I don't know what he.
Did you all know that he was pulling for you? That he had wrote?
Yeah, and that was what prompted a lot of our letters. We knew that. In fact, I think he had asked us to do that. Did you notice on these letters, that was back before the days of zip codes.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
No zip codes.
So Lucille, you were very. Did you feel different than all these other people, or did you feel like a rank and file mill worker?
No, I felt like one of them. But I felt like, and I think rightly so, that I should be a leader in that because I had more guts than they had. You know, they needed somebody to stand up for them. Maybe I was too patronizing there because I tried to get them involved, you know, as much as possible. But I felt that I had an obligation because I wasn't afraid to speak in public. I didn't mind talking to the press, and I wanted them to be like that, but they needed me. And I think a lot of them did. A lot of them did develop into, you know, people that could meet the press and talk in meetings and do all those things.
If we look at this list of people that were fired, I
Hmm.
just wonder, just as a sort of like an exercise, if you might remember, um, what not so much what came of these people, but how these people grew,